Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining Vista View Solutions webinar today. Today our Q&A Cafe is on what's new with SAP Business ByDesign, their release 2102 with your host Laura Herculo. My name is Catherine and I'll be facilitating today. Of course, we record these sessions so everyone will remain on mute, and then of course we will send you out the recording in the email within a couple of days. If you have any questions, as always, please make sure to type them into the questions or chat box window at any time, and we'll answer them towards the end of this presentation. And then please don't forget to join us for next week's Q&A Cafe on Wednesday. That's going to be March the 10th on ByDesign fiscal year end. You can find registration information about that always on our resources page or on our website, and in the email that we send out with the recording too. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Laura.
Great, thanks, Catherine. All right, if you've joined me for the past 3 years, you know that this is one of the 4 favorite times of my years when we get to talk about what's new in ByDesign and all the fun, new, funky features that you guys get to take advantage of. And this release is no different. So there's a bunch of very cool things. And again, if you know me, I'm a supply chain gal. So we got some really cool new features that came out in the supply chain area, more in terms of production, that are really going to help those of you that actually make things within ByDesign in the production control area. So, and then there's also lots of other new things. And then I'm also going to spend a little bit of time, or just kind of give you kind of a sneak peek as to a few new features that are coming into 2105 that are in limited release right now. So with that, let's get cracking. All right, the first bit is cross topics. The first area is, I'm hoping that everybody should be jumping in their seats for this one, because I think there's like hundreds of different requests in Influence for this one, which is being able to manually unlock documents and end sessions for users. If any of you are admins on the system and you wind up going into a document that said it's locked by user ABC and you can't get out of it, or they say they're out of it but they're not really out of it, and you have to sort of wait time for everything to time out, that no longer is an issue. So very, very convenient for any of your admins to be able to unlock any documents that are in there, and I'm going to show you that in a sec. There's a new capability, again, another Influence topic, which was the mobile app. So the manager approval app. So this isn't the standard ByDesign mobile app, which also has approvals integrated into it. This is specifically the manager approval app. It now is enabled to have push notifications for all the categories that exist within the approvals app, with the exception of time recordings. And then just a side note, these are getting discontinued because they're not very much used. I personally like both of these applications, but the Business in Focus app, which is more of like an executive type dashboard application, has been, and the active sales, both of these have been discontinued and will be removed from the store within the next couple months. Just to note, like, I'm not sure if anyone that is more in product-based sales that uses the active sales app, there are things that you could ask us at VistaView to be able to replace that, because it was really kind of a mobile ordering pad, iPad application that you could take and actually create sales orders. So if that is something that you're using actively now that you're gonna freak out if it goes away, just email me and let me know, and we'll figure something out for that one. You can still use them, they're just not going to be updated or supported going forward. So if anything happens, you're kind of out of luck on that. And then another, probably most likely unused area within Business ByDesign is there was a corporate performance work center that was in the application, and within it, it had 4 different dashboards for like purchasing, finance, 2 other areas I can't remember off the top of my head. They were based out of Crystal Excelsius, but with the discontinuation of Adobe Flash, that now renders these applications null and void. So they'll be available until 2108, and then they'll be removed. But you know, outside there's a lot more capability within the regular dashboards that you can create outside of the Excelsius one. So you probably aren't using these very much. So let me hop into ByDesign just to show you where to find the unlock lock screen. And so this is, again, only for an administrator. You'll go into your little head and then into the key user settings. You'll now see a new option in there under startup adaptation mode, and then the company settings called user sessions settings. And within here, you'll see all the sessions that are open for any of your users. You'll notice I'm logged in as the admin, so I can't really remove my own session unless I had multiples, and I would see those listed here. But as a user, I can just click delete to delete one. I can select multiples, or I can do a total full select, and then as I select that, I can end the session. So you've got lots of different ways to be able to do one or many or all if you need to. And then just kind of popping into the mobile app, you'll see, you know, if you go into your notifications, so this is for the manager approval app, into your notifications, and it's just like any other app. So if you're turning on and off things, you should feel comfortable with this. But you'll see now it's under approvals, so it's not like mobile approvals or SAP. I had a little bit of a hard time finding it myself. But then you can turn on, again, anything, all your alerts or banners or things like that, as well as sounds and whatnot for anything that's coming in, and then just turn them on and off. So that's just a quick peek as to where to access those different areas. All right, that was it in the cross topics area. So let's pop back into CRM. So there's lots of good stuff in the CRM area. The first one, this is kind of like an ongoing type of improvements that are coming into ByDesign, the whole concept of insight to action. So being able to run any type of report that you want within the system and be able to take action on the data results. So the last few that we've had come out were, you know, the first one was ABC classification on customers and suppliers. So I could basically, as an example, run a report for all of my customers that had sales above X dollar, and those would be considered my A customers. I can run that sales order volume report, filter it by the volume, and then click a button, and automatically it would produce a mass update to all of my accounts. Same thing with the suppliers. So this new one is a little bit more intriguing if you're using marketing in ByDesign, or if you're just using marketing anywhere else. If you're using something like a HubSpot to be able to do more targeted marketing to your customers. So rather than saying, show me all of my customers that I have in my customer base, and I'm going to send 40,000 emails out and hope that something comes back, why don't I focus on something that's a little bit more niche to my customer base? So maybe I want to say, you know, I could run, in my example that I'm going to show, a profitability report and say, okay, show me my most profitable customers, and now I'm going to give them a discount, or show me the customers that have ordered more, or repeat customers, or things like that. So it gives you a lot more insight into the data of like how your customers are behaving with you to be able to do much more specific targeting for them, rather than just running a standard list of something like geography or whatnot. So here I can actually just say any single report in the system that contains a customer, I can create these different target groups. And if you are familiar with the marketing capability, I don't need to use the email blast capability in ByDesign. I can take that campaign and actually export the results of my master data into something like an external marketing tool like a HubSpot, or potentially a SurveyMonkey or something like that. So it does open up a lot of really kind of cool use cases for it. This is not super exciting, but the global trade identification number for the kit header is now supported on over-the-counter sales scenarios. So before you weren't able to just, punch in a GTIN for a kit header if you're using over-the-counter sales, but now you can. Again, another non-super exciting one, but partner libraries have been enabled in the SDK, so we can read sales unit hierarchy and employees belonging to a sales unit within all the different document types. So you can do probably more so if you're using like external tools for like maybe commissions or things like that to pull multiple people that sit within a particular geography or territory or things like that into an external system. This might impact most people if you're using price lists in the system, and hopefully you are. They've changed the way that the scales work in the system. So if you remember, probably prior to 2102, the scales were a little bit weird. So you started with your 1, and then your first scale wasn't starting at like 0 to to a particular number. It always started sort of with the next number up. So everything now starts with a 0. So if you do have scales, you'll see a change in the scale list, that everything now is like your first scale tier is 0, and so that'll impact even potentially any uploads, or if you're doing uploads to change price lists and stuff. So just keep that one in mind, and that impacts your price list, discount lists, and freight lists. And then this is one that I had asked for, which I'm actually excited that something that I asked for got in, and it's just small, but it's kind of important. When you're in the accounts work center work list, before, the role only existed for prospects. So if you just wanted to, like, again, if you were using CRM and you wanted to filter out all of your prospects for like whoever's in your leads and your pipeline, you had to write a query on it to say everybody not including prospects. Now they actually just have specifically added account there, so you can filter just on your accounts, and then potentially a status of accounts. And we'll show you that one too. This is the big one, and we'll walk through an example of this one. So whoever is using service order items that have had questions or requirements around timesheets, so being able to actually fill a timesheet, this is actually quite a big requirement, and it really is a nice kind of marrying up, if you will, of companies that have both field-based services and project-based services that potentially use the same resources across. Prior to this release, if, let's say, John was working on a couple service tickets out in the field of short-term jobs, just an hour or two, he's going to repair something, but he was also working on maybe a longer-term installation where he had to enter his timesheet, he'd have to go in and enter the time against the project, and then separately do a service confirmation, and then book that time again into his timesheet. So that's all become equal now. So basically, if I do a service confirmation, I can turn on a setting in the background that says, all right, when John actually does a service confirmation, also populate his timesheet. So it makes it a lot easier for your guys in the field to be able to get that time into the timesheet without having to do double entry. And we will show that as well. And then another piece that I'm excited about too is the cancellation of a contract line item prior to the start date. So this it sounds kind of inconsequential, but it's kind of a big deal too. Again, prior to this release, let's say you had a contract with a line item that was supposed to start out in, it was getting ready, you were doing maybe a renewal and you were getting it started and having it hanging out there. You had released it, but you haven't invoiced it yet. Maybe it was starting in April 1st, and you figured out you made a mistake or you needed to add or change something. Once a contract is released, you can't make changes to certain aspects of it. So you'd have to put the system wouldn't allow you to put a cancellation date that was prior to the start date of the line item. So you had to have it sit there till April 1st, and it would sit in AR's work list until then as something that should have been invoiced or executed, even though, you know, if you went to execute it, you'd be stopped, but it was still kind of annoying sitting out there. So now, basically, if on March 3rd, I find that I haven't started that, that line item yet, and it was sitting out in April 1st, and I put a cancellation date for March 3rd, the system will then change the start date to March 3rd, and it'll fall off my list. So again, really sounds small and tiny, but for those that use contracts, it's kind of a big deal. So let's start, and I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of the examples just to quickly show you where to access some of these things. So the first one's going to be just, again, the insight into action, and this is going to be more of a key user type capability just to activate it. And then once it's there, all the users that have access to the report where you have it activated, they'll be able to run it. So you'll go into business analytics and then into your navigations. And so within the navigations, there's two types in here, your analytic actions as well as your navigation targets. If you want to add, you know, the capability to kind of zoom from one report to another, you can add custom ones like that. But in here, I've got my create target group for profit. So I'm going to do it based on like my profitability. And I'll just show you. So when you come in here, you're going to identify what your source report is. So that's the one thing to note, that, you know, once you activate this type of insight to action, it only is it only relates to one report. So if you want to show it in multiple places, you just kind of have to lather, rinse, repeat this action. And then there's a whole bunch of actions. So you'll see a whole bunch of things that are on sort of the roadmap for coming out, but also can be activated using the SDK. So you can use these in SDK. But I've got my create target group in there. And then this mapping will automatically show up, and then with a blank on the character name, and then you will just pick. It's either, depending on the type of report that it's going to be, you'll see either customer or account, again, depending on the source report. And so when I go into my report, so I did this on my profit overview. And just real quickly, I mean, I'm just going to change the report. I'm not going to do any sort of filters, but let's say we've got it by our customer. We're looking at maybe just a particular amount of customers that we've got. And then anytime, so any of these results now will pop itself into a target group. And so where you want to do that, like there's different insight to actions here. As I click on different things, you've got line item level details for insight to action on that, but where you want to do these to create the target groups is at the header. So this little clipboard here, you'll see that this new insight that we just created is going to pop up. So what it'll do is it'll create a target group in my marketing area for me to execute against. Pretty easy, but again, super powerful in terms of kind of reducing wasted marketing activities. All right, we talked about the market of the scales. The other area was just the account, again, just to show you what I was talking about in terms of all accounts. So let's look at all of our accounts, and some of them would be like my prospects and accounts. Now you'll see in the role here in my look. So if I went into my prospects, you'd see all these guys here, but then if I switch to my accounts, I can do that. It's just a new feature that popped up. For me, I just like it, that it's there now, that we can filter either or rather than having to do a not equal to sort of action. All right, now let's get into the big one. So the service order time confirmation. So what I'm going to do just is create a brand new service order in here, and we'll enter it for some snow removal, as we're now entering into spring and I'm getting away from all of my snow removal activities at home. So let's say we've got a guy that, you know, they're going out and they're doing the snow removal. I'm going to do it for a fixed price. The time and material is pretty straightforward. And again, not sure how many people are using the service module, or potentially even if you're using field view, this can also be activated to go from field view to service confirmations into the system. But for this specifically, just something to be aware of when you're activating this. So first of all, just to go back, I mentioned that it does have to be activated in business configuration. So first of all, if you do want to turn this functionality on, you've got the service and repair under service order within your questions area, your group for service order processing with time recording. You'll want to tick that box on. And then this will come in, and you'll want to have, you don't necessarily have to, but you can have just maybe change the time profile for positive time recording, which means they have to record for everything. I haven't firmly tested if it comes in for exception based, but I'm pretty sure it will for both. But you'll see in here that you've got maybe a fixed price type item. Typically in the time and material, if you say it's going to be 3 hours, the duration is going to change to 3 hours. Within your service item setup, you can actually specify a conversion rate between your fixed price product of the one each to a particular number of hours. And the field that's going to impact that timesheet is going to be this duration. It's not going to be this quantity. So it's always going to be something that you want to be careful of when you're doing this. So I could say as a default, my snow removal up to 5,000 square feet is going to take some guy 3 hours to do. If it's up to 10,000 square feet, it'll take him 6 hours. So then when he actually confirms that, if he doesn't change that number in the confirmation, it's going to confirm sort of like a backflush in production. It's going to just take that 3 hours or 6 hours. So again, just something to be cognizant of if you're using the service confirmations and you hide that duration field from your operators, you might want to unhide it and keep it there and just make sure that they're aware that that's there. But as I come in and I'll release that service confirmation, and we'll see that Jack is the guy that's responsible for doing the service. And we can come in and confirm that. And so as I mentioned, you've got your one each. Well, maybe it was super icy, super heavy, or we got a lot more snow than what he actually anticipated. I can change that 1 hour to 2 hours here and then release my confirmation. And then what we'll see as we pop into his timesheet is that entry. So let's look up Jack. And if we pop into this week, so now we'll see that we've got this actual hours, so the 2 hours. And then if you need to see what he did and where he worked, it's the same thing, just like a project. You're going to see the service confirmation, the service order, the service description, and what he actually did, and then the confirmation quantity. Up till now, like it was, if you could do service confirmations from the timesheet, but not vice versa. So you could say, okay, I did a quantity of one, and that will confirm back either the sales order or the service order. Now you can do it both ways, which makes it, I think, really, really nice for us. So that is going to be our service order time confirmation. I think that ends the CRM type stuff. So within financial management, last release, the 1099 NEC tax return did get released. There were a little bug. It was a little buggy. I know a lot of you had some problems filing the forms. We got SAP right on it. They fixed it. So I think it's more like a general notice that it's out there with the new changes and updates. So it should be working fine. I know we've gotten some positive response on our end that the files did go through. So if you are using the 1099s, you've got your non-employee compensation form, which replaces the miscellaneous form. There's now a new web service that's generally available for managing your bank statement. So being able to come in, currently there's a mapping capability and the ability to, import a BAI2 file into into Business by Design. If you want to automate that, this web service will be able to handle multiple uploads at a time. And it's kind of format agnostic. I'm not sure all the whole details of it. There's a blog out there about it, so you know, it might impact if you're doing any sort of automation on there that you might want to read up about. If you're using BUID and Concur, the standard out-of-the-box integration, not the custom one. If you are using company bill, company paid, credit card transactions, we can do negative transactions are now supported within that integration. And then a bunch of different stuff. So, you know, lease contract management came out maybe 3 releases ago in GA, and ever since then, every release we're getting a little bit more and a little bit better, a little bit more automation on the lease contract side. So some of the new areas are being able to reopen a closed lease contract if you haven't retired the right of use asset. You can do posting runs for multiple options. And then there's also some new reporting. You've got the ability to filter, filter the reporting by version ID. So if you just want to look at your leased asset master data by the most recent version that you've got within the lease, you can do that rather than seeing all of the data and trying to figure out which version it was responsible for it. And then you've got the net present value and posting status are available in both the cash flow lines and lease contract valuation reports. So a new key figure and a new characteristic. And then just like the posting runs, there's a contract processing run, work center view. It's been added where you can do mass data run objects. So, you know, schedule your jobs for valuation, release, or closure for multiple contracts. So this is one to be, again, cognizant of if you're running lease accounting. It's not going to automatically appear. You have to go into application and user management and either your user roles or your business users and actually activate that work center view. So, you know, just like I think in the last release when we had supplier invoicing, it's just something to be cognizant of that, you know, it's out there. It just needs to be exposed to your users. All right, supplier relationship management. Tinkered around with this quite a bit in the last couple of days just to see kind of where it hit and what it did. So you've got the new capability around delivery date proposal in your purchase order, where the purchasing team can define the number of days which the delivery date proposal will consider. We're going to walk through an example of this. So in the past, when you created a PO manually, the default number of days for delivery was just a week, and you'd have to manually change it. Now you can actually more flexibly define by purchasing unit, company, and supplier the delivery date term. So almost like a lead time. It doesn't get down to the item level detail, but it does get, it's a little bit more granular. There are some really good improvements. So everybody that's been giving feedback for intelligent invoice scanning for any of the enhancements that you've been either putting in through incident support or directly to SAP, thank you, keep it coming because it's just making the product much better. There's the upload of company data. So again, these two areas, the upload of company data and then transferring scan values to the system instead of the PO information, those are both, again, business configuration changes that you need to opt into. So you have to go in there and make those changes. And some of these are just, and then the other ones are just usability. So multi-select scanned items for deletion. Before it was just a single select, delete, single select, delete. Same with like multi-select for deletion on the actual review screen. So you can delete multiple line items rather than just single at a time. And they've introduced an OData service for uploading PDFs for scanning. I'm not exactly sure how this would be used. I kind of think it's what I see it potentially is for I don't know, replacement for the collaboration window to be able to do bulk imports or bulk uploads at a time, but I'm not exactly sure. But these two pieces are pretty good, because currently, you know, if you have a centralized purchasing department and you sit in one company and you're doing payables for multiple companies, prior to this, it would just read the company as a default of where you actually sat, unless you filled it in within the scanning upload, and it was really easy to forget to fill that in. So you'd have to sort of back out and redo your uploads and stuff like that. So now you can opt to say, all right, read the, you know, scrape the address or scrape the company name or things like that. And it's going to actually figure out what company that PO is coming from. And then this one was the transferring of scanned values to the system instead of the PO information. So what this means is that, you know, in the past, like if the system found on your scanned supplier invoice a purchase order number, it would try to find the purchase order number, bring it in, and then what it would do is just copy over all the information from the purchase order. Well, it doesn't really make sense in a lot of people when they're using three-way match, and you know, potentially you're receiving in pounds and nothing is exact, and so you were never really getting a true three-way match, or you were finding that you were rekeying a lot of data in. So now, again, more in the context of doing probably more stock-based purchases where you do have a three-way match process going, this will read the scan values from the invoice over just the default purchase order values. So again, I think that's a great improvement, and I saw that from a couple of people that were doing testing that saw that. And then they added some new extension scenarios. So you've got, you can add lines from the PO to the PO confirmation item, and then the goods and services receipt to the supplier invoice request item, or the goods and services receipt acknowledgement to the invoice request header. Again, really just kind of more rounding out those full extension scenarios of where things are. Lots of supplier relationship management this time, so we got a lot of good stuff. There's a new procurement price specification data source, and that can be joined with other data sources if you need to pull a list of your price lists and things like that. Purchasing contracts with invoice expected set to false but active for sourcing. There's a new check to verify that the invoice expected flag should be unset or set, however it is. So I think in the past, like if you were doing maybe like a $0 purchase item, you would uncheck, but you wanted to be able to drive sort of like samples and things like that. You'd create a contract that would default the unchecked flag and things like that, and it sometimes would not let you activate it for sourcing if it was $0, but now they've improved that significantly. So there's now also, I think if you've been in those last few webinars, you've seen over the course of the last probably 2 or 3 releases that they are continually adding the supplier part number in lots of different searches for customers. Again, probably more products-based customers that have like multiple suppliers that use the same widget, nut, bolt, screw, whatever, but they get it from 50 different suppliers, and being able to put that supplier part number in, it's now appearing in your PO work list. So if you're maintaining the master data in your product master, that'll automatically, again, trickle over into your PO, and then you can search by any of those part numbers. There's also an RFQ item details data source that's been added. And then PO order confirmation web service enablement. So again, another new web service. This is kind of a pretty cool if you're thinking about ever doing some sort of like supplier portal where you you know, put the information out there. They put in their delivery dates rather than emailing you back with a marked up sheet or sending you an Excel spreadsheet or something where you have to rekey it in. This can significantly reduce your time to time of data entry. So just to pop into the data configuration in here for this intelligent invoice scanning, you'll see under supplier or under purchasing, supplier invoicing within the questions. there are these two options. So there's about there's 4 or 5 different options that are in here now for the supplier invoicing. So just to kind of take care of all of those. And then you've got these 2 new guys that are appearing. All right, so let's pop in and we'll just kind of walk through this, and I'm just going to tell you the notes here real quick about the flexible delivery date. It's within the common tasks area from the purchase requests and orders work center. You'll see the priority determination is like any of those other determination tables, top to bottom. Most specific up top, least specific at bottom. The system will continue down its sequence until it finds a match, and then it uses that data. The one thing and to note in here that that's important, that it's only being used in the manual PO creation. So not supply planning. So if you're using, if you're using supply planning, it's going to take your lead times that you have set within, within the item master, and then any other list price or contract that it's pulling from. So any other valid source of supply, it's going to take whatever you've listed there. And then if it can't find anything, it's going to give you that by default 7 days. So we'll pop into there, into the purchase requests and orders, and you'll see in a new common task, you've got this defined purchase order delivery date. And so I just did a quick setup of 10 days in here for my American-made supply company, and then AAA supplies is at 15 days. So again, you'll see you've got some capability around doing nested type capability, just like every other one, every other table that looks just like this. And I can simply move things up and down. I can upload or download them if I have a whole lot. As I mentioned, it's really kind of limited to company, supplier, and purchasing unit. I can't get down to like a product category or an item at this point. Hopefully maybe they'll add some more, and if you put some ideas into influence, if you need to see that. But again, really just for those people that potentially aren't using, pricing contracts, supply planning, things like that. So as a default, I'll put like ABC Cargo for a product. So we don't have anything set up for that guy. And when I enter my product, with my baseball hat, you'll see automatically that the delivery date there is going to default to 3/10, and that's the 7 days, 3/3 plus 7 days. But if I change that to AAA, oops, caps lock, AAA, and put in our process type, you'll now see that the delivery date changes to 3/18. And then if I move it to American-made supply and add my row, it goes to 3/13. So I'm taking into account those 10 and 15 days. The other thing to note in here is that if you change this main line item, like let's say you know that it's not 10 days for this particular delivery, but it's 8 days, and you change the main line or the first line's delivery date, every subsequent one won't go back to that table. It'll read it for this PO only. So it keeps you, again, from having to rekey in every single time. So it'll proliferate down through the different delivery dates. Right. Okay, so that takes account the supplier part numbers and everything. I think if you want to, the handouts are in here as well for you to be able to download all the information in here with the screenshots in case you have to refer back, because I think I'm talking about 5,000 miles a minute, and hopefully you're catching at least 60% of what we're covering. But they are the blogs that are out there, and there's a lot of good videos and things that I highly recommend. So again, now we get into my favorite part, the supply chain management stuff, which is, yay, finally, how many years that people have been on ByDesign, and we finally have being able to change the quantities of and dates of started production orders. So we've got lots of new features that people that actually have fallout in production and need to take into account that information in downstream tasks. That's now capable. So we've got a lot of new stuff in there. there's a new function if you are using supply to production tasks. Prior to that, if it couldn't find like a logistics area, you'd have to key it in manually. Now, just like every other task, there is a button in there that says propose actual quantities and locations for any of your supply to production tasks. This is another, again, it's just a button, but it's a great button to have, which is refresh the product planning details from the products view of the supply planning work center. So if you are using MRP and let's say you selected 5, 6, 10,000 different parts and you're going through your list and you're rerunning MRP and you save it and you want to like refresh the data or do something, or let's say you've made, you know, maybe you've gone in and changed some master data and then rerun MRP. And then you'd have to actually back out of the item to see the refresh of the master data that you've popped into and potentially made changes on. Here now you can make changes and it'll refresh everything automatically. Right. This is also a cool one if you're doing serialization. I probably won't have time to walk through an example, but if we do, I will. So if you're using serialization and you've got, you know, like a large serialized component with multiple subcomponents that are attached to it, there's the capability to actually upload the hierarchy so you can create the relationship between the components and you know, and the main item. If you're using production orders that are one-to-one, so it's just like one each and everything else flows that way, that hierarchy will get created for you automatically, so you don't have to type it in or upload it from Excel. It works pretty well. And then this again is another nice new option in here about preventing production task execution based on feasibility. So before we had the ability to just not release the production order based on its feasibility, now we can actually prevent the tasks from even starting. So if something was in a yellow status where you know, I didn't have a send ahead quantity or something like that, or if maybe there was some transit time in between or move time in between operations, things like that, it would sit in yellow, but it wouldn't prevent anybody from actually doing something before the time they were allowed to. Now you can actually set those those bits on, you can set it on the bill of operations, you can set it on the production model, and then you can set it even at the production order side of the house. All right, so this is, again, your task feasibility, where I've got, you know, disallow. I'm going to ask them to change that from disallow to prevent. It's a little bit of a better word. So prevent production task execution. And I set that on, like I said, the bill of materials, the production model, or the actual production order itself. And then what'll happen, it doesn't prevent the user from going in and actually keying in a confirmation quantity, or it doesn't gray out any buttons right now. Hopefully this is just the first iteration, but what'll happen is if they start keying in the confirm quantity and try to change the status or confirm something, they'll get a confirmation failed and that the task can't be started and check the feasibility status. So, you know, it's kind of a secondary check. Hopefully the operators know when they see a yellow or red that they shouldn't really start something, but that doesn't happen in all cases. This is then their stopgap, right? And then this is kind of the last piece, the serial hierarchy automation. So this is just a visualization of, from the service entitlements area where I've got my main item and then my input products that serialized items that went into that output, and that gets automatically generated. You know, what we notice is that the items need to be set to mandatory on all logistics processes for your items. And then the production order quantity, output quantity must be set to 1 each. I haven't necessarily tested this fully yet to see if I could do this with, like, say, a production order of 10 eaches and then just do a confirmation of 1 each at a time and see if this works. So we'll test that and see if that works. But you know, the documentation was a little bit, it wasn't as clear as, you know, explaining that if there was any difference to that, or if I just had to have a work order that was for one each. So maybe we'll report back to that at a later point. All right, and then we showed that. So let's go into the production area, and we'll show a couple of the features that we have here. Just go back in my list so I make sure that I cover everything. So within the, you know, in my task control here, we'll show a couple different pieces. So, you know, again, real quickly, I've got the a supply and make operation for my boiler. If I come in and confirm the supply operation, just to show that you believe me, that we've got the proposed quantity and logistics areas that that are sitting here. So your open quantity, okay. I can select all, propose, there we go. And that's going to show me my source logistics area and everything, whether it's allocated. So that was never there before, and that actually makes it really nice. So I don't have to key in anything and potentially fat finger any sort of issues. So that is a good new addition. Let's see, let's go through the task feasibility. So I've got, again, in here, this work order 3112. I've got 2 steps in it. My first step is in green, and actually let's look at this one. So my little blue dish that's sitting here, this is in blue, or sorry, in green, and then I've got the next task that's in red. So let's say, for example, somebody in another work center said, you know, let me go and try to confirm this. As soon as they pop into the confirm area, as I mentioned, it's not going to prevent them. There's nothing pops up automatically for that, which I would hope that they will add that at some point in time. As soon as I start entering a confirmed quantity, you're going to see that confirmation creation failed, and that I need to check the feasibility. So they won't be able to do anything. So I think that's a nice little bump there. And then if we want to change our quantities, we've got our item in here. Let's use our kind of 3067 for the Callaway, our Callaway putter head. And if we go, you know, obviously we probably want to be able to change the quantities at maybe a lower level, at the task level. Everything now kind of starts from the header and works its way down. So it's got some implication. I'm not sure how many implications it has for certain people on reporting and things like that. I can see how it might, depending on, you know, what you're analyzing based on like plan date versus actual start date. But if I've got, you know, as an example, this guy for 5 eaches, and I can look at, you know, this all started back in 2020, and if, you know, it's the earliest start date, you know, maybe I can't get to this now until you know, 03, 09, 21, it's going to do its forward scheduling or backward scheduling, however I see fit. What you'll notice, and if you haven't, some on the plan dates, that it actually starts again from the header and does a replanning. Even though this guy is finished, it doesn't lock in the original earliest, latest start date. So again, depending on what your reports look like, you might want to take a look at some of those. But the other piece, if let's say I did have some fallout, maybe there was in my first operation, I had one thing that was wrong, and I know I'm only going to get out 4 at the end of the process. As soon as I change that, I can see, you know, the planned quantity here is going to be 5 because it's finished, it hasn't started. Now I know I'm only going to get 4 out. So it's got huge implications on your planning, you know, your planning capabilities and things like that, to be able to either reduce or increase, probably more so on the increase side of if you need to go in and make more than what you anticipated because of something. This gets you, this will immediately and automatically reflect back to all of your supply chain type areas in here. And all of it impacts, again, all of your planning too. So if you've got things that are really long lead times and you haven't done purchasing for like, you know, a month out of components that you need, again, super, super helpful. And I'm glad that they're making a lot of changes in this area. We've got a few minutes left, so I will just kind of pop in and show you the creation of this, the serial hierarchy. So I do have a finished product item. It's got 2 steps to it. And so you can see how it actually works if I don't have to necessarily confirm all the serialized items on one step. I can have them accumulate over various steps. So I'm going to confirm my 1. Since this is in process, I don't have an output product. I've got my input product. And then I can select whichever serial number is active. So I've got 3 or serial number 5. And then once I finish that guy, I can go in and create the next one. And so again, like what I found when I was testing this on that whole start feasibility piece too, is that it does work a little bit different for serialized items. It was kind of screwing me up a little bit because with the serialized items, you feed that confirmed quantity through creating serial numbers. So the error doesn't come up quite where you'd expect it to. So that's just something to be cognizant of. So let's just do 400 for this guy, create our serial number, we can generate them. And so again, like you'll see in here, you can upload that hierarchy via an Excel, but we're going to do that automatically. So I'm going to take that another serial component, and we'll use serialized item number 3. And we'll finish this one out. And so where you go to actually look at this and what the hierarchy looks like, you can do it straight from here. There's some reports. Again, I don't know who on the phone might be using serialized type components, but if you do, there's hidden data sets. There's not actual physical report that you would find for your serialized history and hierarchy. Now you'd have to, as an admin in business analytics, create them. But if you have your service entitlements work center, there's the registered products. Any serialized item, mandatory serialized item, generates this what we call the registered product, whether you have service turned on or not. And so we'll look at our item. And so we created our registered product 400 just in this example. And then where you see that hierarchy is this open chart. And so now we'll see kind of how that just automatically got created with all its parent and the child subcomponents assigned to it. Right. So I think there might be some questions. And so that takes us to the end. Actually, one last thing, just to kind of give you wet your whistle for the next release that's coming out. To say, hold on to your hats. Some cool things are coming out from SAP. All of these things are or close to either being in controlled release. So one of the neater things, there's a video out there in the What's New Release video that SAP put together that shows you what this cool new integration to Microsoft Teams is. So you'll be able to actually integrate your dashboards into Teams. So if you're having an interactive conversation and you want to bring up a report and kind of dig into it, you can do that without having to pop into ByDesign, or you can, I think it's going to be really cool if maybe you're in projects, like a projects type organization where you're having maybe a Teams meeting with your external client, rather than having to export all kinds of reports into Excel or things like that. You can kind of dynamically dig into reports. There's also intelligent expense scanning. So just like the invoice scanning for supplier invoices, the expenses now have the capability, if you're using Concur, same type of operation where you take a picture of your expense, your receipt, and then there's an extract. It'll scrape it and try to fill in the quantities, the dollars, the type of expense that it is. So that should be pretty cool. And then consignment inventory. So again, another big topic that's been asked for quite a bit over the last lots of years that I've been working with ByDesign. In the past, like let's say you have, I always use like a medical device. That's a great example for this. And maybe like contacts or something that you as the manufacturer are giving a lot of inventory out to a lot of your customers, but they need to have a lot of different options there. Or again, like hospitals will take all the devices, they have them in stock for surgeries, but they're only going to use the size and quantity when they need it, and they're only going to pay for you when they actually use it. So in the past with ByDesign, you actually had to create specific locations or business residences to be able to handle all of this inventory and who it belonged to and where it was, and you couldn't do planning or anything like that on it. So now what they've introduced is a new item type that's called consignment, where you can ship out without invoicing all the inventory that you need to a separate location without having to set up a separate location. And just like in the repair scenario, it consigns it to that customer that you shipped it to. And then when they use it, you just do a release off of that order. So it really, really is a nice new function that's gonna really help kind of reduce a lot of the extra workaround work that might have been introduced to support you in having extended warehousing in other locations. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and as excited as I am about a lot of the new features and functions and lots of cool new stuff. The roadmap's being developed for the next 4 or 5 releases. So hopefully we'll see a lot of other new things that you've asked for in Influence. And as a slight plug, keep going into Influence and vote into the ideas. You can always search for the Vista View ones that we put in on behalf of you, or just, you know, because we have ideas with the tag VVS. If you search for that, you'll be able to see a lot of the ones that we've put in. And then we'll talk to you next week on period close.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much, Laura. Appreciate it. And thank you everybody for attending today's webinar. As Laura mentioned, please don't forget to join us next week on Wednesday for our fiscal year end in ByDesign.
Bye-bye.